Hi, Mystery Recapped here. Today, I'm going to explain a thriller adventure movie called Gold. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. The movie opens in a dystopian future in which a devastating global war has pushed civilization to the verge of collapse. We then meet our protagonist, Vigil, who is currently on a freight train traveling through a scorching desert landscape. During the journey, he notices a hungry mother and baby staring longingly at his food. Vigil feels sorry for them, so he limps towards the two and offers them his bread. After getting off at a station, he meets Keith, a driver who is supposed to take him to a location called The Compound. Vigil washes his face and gets ready for the journey, but Keith warns him not to waste too much water. The two then board Keith's pickup truck, and while driving, he mentions that he will charge an additional fee for water and gas. Upon hearing this, Vigil is annoyed, as he thought gas was already included in the $200 fare. But when the driver threatens to turn back and leave, Vigil has no choice but to accept his terms. He then attempts to use the AC, but Keith quickly turns it off, claiming it will overheat the engine. Sometime later, they come to a stop because the truck breaks down with a puncture. Vigil then begins to change the wheel, possibly to avoid further charges from Keith. During this time, they witness a wild dog eating another dog, which is still alive but severely injured. Feeling pity for the poor creature, Keith chases the attacking dog away and then kills the injured one with a stone to stop its suffering. At night, the duo camps in the desert and talks about their country's problems. Keith then asks Vigil why he's going to the compound, and the latter shows him an advertisement pamphlet offering a job and a better life there. When the driver sees this, he starts laughing and says it's not what he expects, as they only make false promises to attract cheap labor. He claims that there's nothing good there, except for pain and hard work. However, Vigil isn't bothered, as life where he comes from isn't any better. The next day, the two continue their journey, and Vigil even takes over the wheel while Keith sleeps. Our cheeky hero takes this opportunity to use the AC, but it turns out to be a huge mistake. As the driver had warned, the truck begins to overheat and eventually breaks down. Keith soon awakens in a rage and starts shouting at Vigil, who quickly apologizes for his actions. Later, while Keith is busy repairing the vehicle, Vigil walks a short distance away to relieve himself. There, a pile of rocks catches his attention, and he notices something glittering beneath that appears to be gold. This discovery shocks him, so he immediately summons the driver to investigate. They both carefully take a closer look, and Keith even fires a lighter at the metal to confirm that it is indeed gold. With this discovery, both men become immensely excited, as it could potentially change their lives forever. They then try various methods to extract the gold, but it turns out to be quite large and deeply embedded in the ground. They even try to extract it by tying it to the pickup truck with a rope and driving away. However, the piece of precious metal is so heavy that the rope immediately snaps under the strain. Later that night, they decide to set up camp near the gold and start a bonfire to keep the wild dogs away. As they engage in conversation, the duo realizes that they will be unable to extract the gold on their own, so they need to get an excavator. Keith then instructs Vigil to go to the nearest town and find an excavator, while he remains behind to guard the gold. He mentions that he has some trusted contacts in the town and will provide Vigil with their information. However, Vigil insists that he should be the one to stay behind because he's unfamiliar with the town and knows no one. Keith reiterates that staying in the desert is difficult because he must ration water and food, and there's no way to get more nearby. He also mentions that Vigil is not used to this harsh environment, and the desert may wear him down to the point where he does something foolish. Furthermore, Keith doubts Vigil is tough enough to defend himself or the gold if someone passes by. Despite everything, our hero remains firm in his decision, leaving the driver with no choice but to agree. The following morning, the resources are divided between the two men, with Keith taking more food and water. Before leaving, he gives Vigil a bag containing a knife for hunting animals, some clothes to protect himself from the sun, and a satellite phone for communication. The men then bid farewell for now, and Keith promises to return in 5 days with the excavator. After the driver leaves, Vigil immediately gets to work and covers the gold so no one else can see it. He then sets up a small camp and gathers branches branches from nearby to light a bonfire. Later that night, we see Vigil sitting by the fire quietly, eating canned food. He suddenly hears the angry howls of wild dogs very close by. The dogs soon circle the improvised camp, but are too afraid to approach the fire. The next morning, Vigil takes a dump and decides not to wash his hands as he needs to save water. He then hears the phone ringing and starts running toward it, still with his pants down. Unfortunately, he fails to answer the phone on time before it stops ringing. Later that afternoon, he goes for a short walk and discovers the remains of a plane wreck in a lowland behind a hill. The plane seems like a comfortable shelter, but Vigil decides not to stay there as he needs to guard the gold. Instead, he breaks off pieces of the fuselage skin and drags them back to his camp, where he uses the materials to construct a more durable shelter. As time passes, the sun begins to affect Vigil's skin, causing several sunburns on his face. With nothing else to do, he starts digging the sand around the gold and eventually breaks off a good chunk, which makes him very happy. Hours later, the phone rings and it turns out to be Keith. He reveals that his truck has been damaged and that it will take him longer to return. Vigil then tells him about the piece of gold he was able to remove, but the driver tells him to wait and not do anything else until he arrives. As the days pass, Vigil's supplies begin to run out, leaving him in a desperate situation. His burns are also getting worse, and he has very little water left. Despite everything, he continues to caress the piece of gold as if it were his baby. One morning, Vigil notices a snake approaching and decides to catch it with his knife for food. However, it quickly escapes, and the man is frustrated to discover that he accidentally threw away almost all of the water while trying to catch the snake. In the afternoon, Vigil returns to the plane crash site when he notices a woman approaching from afar. He immediately hides inside the plane, but the woman notices him and strikes up a conversation. She asks him to come out and inquires about what he's doing and where he's headed to. However, Vigil refuses to answer her questions and even turns down the food and water she offers him. The woman notices his poor condition and reveals that there is a well with water just 5 kilometers away, but he once again ignores her, which makes her more and more suspicious. Moments later, the woman discovers footprints in the sand and realizes he has another camp nearby. She decides to head in that direction, so a worried Vigil asks her to stop. He offers her the plane as shelter and urges her not to follow him any further. The woman again asks why he's staying in the middle of the desert, but Vigil has no answer. Overcome with stress, he begins to experience a mental breakdown and begs her to leave him alone. The woman feels bad for his condition and offers him some advice to calm him down. But then she begins heading towards the gold's direction, prompting an anxious Vigil to follow her. The two soon arrive at his camp, and she demands to know what he's hiding there. Vigil yells at her to leave, but the woman becomes agitated and starts arguing. She questions his audacity in coming here from the city and taking whatever he wants. She then tries to rummage through his camp, which causes an irritated Vigil to grab a shovel and hit her in the head. However, he instantly regrets his actions when he realizes that he has accidentally killed her. Next, Vigil takes her supplies and begins to dig a hole to bury her, but not long after, the wild dogs detect the scent of a corpse and attempt to dig up the grave. A frustrated Vigil then removes the body and buries it further away, but this attracts even more dogs. With no other option, he gathers some wood and sets fire to the body, as he doesn't want to disrespect her by allowing the dogs to feed on her remains. The next morning, Vigil receives another call on his satellite phone from Keith. The driver reveals that he has already acquired the excavator and is on his way. However, he mentions that the truck is not working properly, so he may need a few more days. At this moment, Vigil notices a vehicle pass by, and for a moment, he considers asking for a ride and leaving with the chunk of gold. However, his greed soon overcomes him, and he decides to stay so that he can become even richer. After some time, he goes in search of more firewood, but he notices a sandstorm approaching. Vigil flees as quickly as he can and seeks refuge at his camp to protect himself, but unfortunately, the camp shakes under the pressure of the wind and eventually gets scattered to pieces. To make matters worse, a fallen tree also strikes him in the head, and he loses consciousness. When the storm finally passes, Vigil wakes up on the sand-covered ground with a branch sticking through his abdomen. He searches for his belongings beneath the sand sand, but finds nothing but the waste he has left behind. Even in this dire situation, he crawls through the desert until he discovers the piece of gold to which he had clung so desperately. He then begins to remove the branch lodged in his abdomen. After that, Vigil cauterizes the deep wound with a can lid heated over the fire and wraps it in a dirty rag before losing consciousness again. In the next scene, Vigil wakes up and is shocked to see the woman he had killed pointing an arrow at him. But before he can say anything, he passes out again. He later awakens next to a bonfire, and the woman offers him some water. Vigil then begins to hear the same words she said to him the first time they met. However, he believes she's just a hallucination, and the heat and dehydration are starting to get to him. The next day, he continues to see the woman, who keeps taking care of him. When Keith calls him, Vigil tells him about the woman and how he has been seeing her everywhere. This freaks Keith out, and he assumes she's after the gold, so he asks Vigil to get rid of her. However, the latter reassures him that she doesn't know about the gold and that he will handle the situation. Sometime later, the woman returns with food and gives some to Vigil. Seeing his poor condition, she also offers to take him to the nearest well, but he shouts at her to leave him alone. The woman agrees, but before leaving, she asks if he has seen her sister. This means that the one he killed earlier was her twin. Vigil is shocked by the revelation, and he asks her to leave before passing out again. In the evening, Vigil wakes up alone and finds himself surrounded by bonfires, which were probably set by the woman before she left. He then realizes that he has become too weak and can't survive for much longer. He calls Keith and asks where he is, and the man seems near as he can see the smoke. Upon hearing this, Vigil feels relieved, but soon the wild dogs begin to approach him. The bonfire eventually goes out, allowing some dogs to approach and bite him on the legs several times. However, Vigil is too weak to run away, and he desperately pleads with Keith to come soon and help him. Meanwhile, we see that the driver is close by and watching everything through binoculars. There are also many used cigarettes and empty cans lying around, revealing that Keith has been waiting there for a few days, hoping that his partner will die. You didn't need binoculars to see that coming a mile away. In the meantime, the pack of wild dogs continues attacking the wounded and exhausted Vigil. He fights them with all of his strength while shouting on the phone. Unfortunately, no one comes to help him, and he is eventually devoured by the dogs. Witnessing his death from a distance, Keith feels a sense of satisfaction and finally arrives at the camp. He then prepares to start the machinery and begin the extraction of gold, but before he can do so, someone unexpectedly shoots him in the chest with an arrow. The movie ends as the man tries to locate his attacker, but miserably fails and collapses dead to the ground. Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.